Hey folks, it's been a bit. I've been away on a vacation basically. A friend of mine recently got married, so I was over at Massachusetts, stayed there for a week, and decided to stay away from social media and actually just like take a break to refresh myself. Definitely needed it, but I'm happy to be back. And what do you know? Mom and dad are fighting again. Microsoft and Sony are arguing about Call of Duty, its relevance. As many of you know, Microsoft is acquiring Activision Blizzard, and in turn, major franchises like Call of Duty. Before I covered this Reset Era thread that talked about regulators who are looking into this to make sure this isn't too anti-competitive. And in Brazil in particular, things are made public. Third-party companies who were questioned were asked about whether they think this move could be anti-competitive. And basically every company that was asked except for Sony said that there is plenty of competition out there in terms of the types of franchises that could compete with Activision Blizzard's own IPs, whereas Sony insisted that few developers/publishers are capable of producing AAA games such as EA, Take-Two, Rockstar, Epic Games, etc. And Sony believes that none of these developers could create a franchise to rival Activision's Call of Duty. They believe that Call of Duty is so popular that it influences users' choice of console. In fact, their network of loyal users is so ingrained that even if a competitor had the budget to develop a similar product, it would not be able to create a rival, insists Sony. I personally disagree with that. Call of Duty is already established, and it's going to be tough to topple it, but is it impossible? No, not really. Now, if you want a more detailed rundown of what Sony said, head over to this Video Games Chronicle article, where scrolling down you'll find all of the exact quotes that Sony relayed. But not long after, Microsoft did respond refuting Sony's claims that its Activision acquisition is anti-competitive and insists that claims are simply unjustifiable under any quantitative or qualitative analysis. They brought up the fact that Call of Duty is coming to PlayStation and that Xbox has no plans to pull Call of Duty from third-party consoles outside of Xbox, and they brought up Minecraft, which, to be fair, yeah, they didn't pull Minecraft from other platforms. They've let that be multi-platform because they'd actually lose money if they pulled Minecraft from other platforms and made it Xbox exclusive, and they believe that it's the same thing for Call of Duty. It's so big that it's actually better for business to keep it multi-platform. And beyond that, they insist that Sony has plenty of ways to compete against Microsoft's acquisition and their subscription model with Game Pass, so on and so forth. This is a bullet list of things that they said are good reasons for why Sony is wrong about Microsoft's alleged anti-competitiveness. Xbox also claimed that Sony are being hypocrites by accusing them of paying developers Game Pass block fees, essentially a cash infusion in exchange for the developer not putting their game on Game Pass. It's essentially paid exclusivity. Now, more recently, PlayStation has responded to a request for comment by GamesIndustry.biz, and PlayStation continues to insist that they are none too happy with Xbox's Call of Duty purchase and their offer of at least 3 years guaranteed non-exclusivity, guaranteed that Call of Duty will launch on Xbox. This is contractually obligated, but beyond that, Xbox can choose to do whatever they want with Call of Duty, though Xbox insists that their long-term plan is to keep Call of Duty multi-platform. But PlayStation says that Xbox's Call of Duty offer was inadequate on many levels, and there's an exact quote that I'd like to highlight, which reads, "I hadn't intended to comment on what I understood to be a private business discussion," said Jim Ryan, CEO of PlayStation, "but I feel the need to set the record straight because Phil Spencer brought this into the public forum. Microsoft has only offered for Call of Duty to remain on PlayStation for 3 years after the current agreement between Activision and Sony ends. After almost 20 years of Call of Duty on PlayStation, their proposal was inadequate on many levels and failed to take account of the impact on our gamers. We want to guarantee PlayStation gamers continue to have the highest quality Call of Duty experience, and Microsoft's proposal undermines this principle." The general reaction on social media is that Jim Ryan is starting to come off as petty. It's hypocritical for PlayStation to say things like, oh, they're not taking into account the impact this has on our gamers, considering the various maneuvers that Sony and PlayStation have pulled that are not quite consumer friendly, the number of ways that they have ensured that major IPs and titles remain exclusive to PlayStation. Final Fantasy is brought up. Final Fantasy 16 is PlayStation exclusive, and Sony and PlayStation paid for that. They shell that money to ensure that. And guess what? That has an impact on gamers because that game is now less accessible. It forces people to purchase PlayStation in order to access that game. It's not much different from what Microsoft is doing by purchasing Activision Blizzard, except Microsoft is obviously doing it on a much larger scale because they just have that much more money. But when it comes to Call of Duty, the fact that Sony and PlayStation are getting 3 years of Call of Duty and a commitment for Call of Duty to remain multi-platform beyond that, I mean, that's better than nothing. The IP is now Microsoft and Xbox's, or at least if regulatory bodies approve of this, but Sony is trying to impede the whole process by being the only ones to claim that there's no way to compete against Call of Duty, and that Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard and obtaining the rights to the Call of Duty IP would be devastating for competition in the gaming landscape, and that gamers would suffer for it. But not only is it possible to compete against Call of Duty and Xbox's subscription-based kind of inclinations, Sony also has no right to talk about things that negatively impact gamers when they have pulled similar maneuvers, when they have locked down exclusivity, not only Final Fantasy 16, but also Final Fantasy 7 Remake, which will likely remain PlayStation exclusive for the foreseeable future. And keep in mind that recently they increased the prices of PlayStation 5s in regions outside the United States. That's certainly going to have an impact to gamers around the world, but the argument doesn't seem to be relevant when it benefits PlayStation. So I'm not saying that one side is better than the other. The whole discussion of consolidation and, just a few major corporations acquiring a bunch of development studios and the concerns surrounding that are definitely valid. But Sony and PlayStation are being really hypocritical in the way they're approaching this discussion and acting as if they've not pulled something similar or wouldn't pull something similar if they had as much money as Microsoft wouldn't make major purchases like this. Hell, if Sony were to acquire the rights to Call of Duty, they would probably, try to make it exclusive, or unless it, doesn't benefit their business, but, they wouldn't be complaining about one company owning Call of Duty if it was Sony and PlayStation who were able to afford to buy this major IP. It's just, it's corporate BS. And not to mention that the reason Sony and PlayStation are arguing so much against the acquisition is because so much of their business comes from Activision Blizzard IPs, namely Call of Duty. Daniel Ahmad here posted on September 7th, fun fact, Sony was Activision Blizzard's largest customer in 2020, accounting for 17% of its sales, or $1.37 billion. And according to this Reset Era thread summarizing what was made public during Brazil's inquiry into Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard, Call of Duty represents an important revenue stream for PlayStation, and it is one of SIE's biggest sources of revenue from third parties. Keep in mind that Sony gets to keep 30% of sales through the PlayStation Store platform, and so many copies are sold through PlayStation that it makes Sony quite a bit of money, and to lose that would have a significant impact in Sony's revenue stream, so they are trying to come up with any excuse possible to try to stall Call of Duty's acquisition, or Microsoft's acquisition of Call of Duty, which finally brings us to social media reactions. Here is Destin from IGN who said, "Cool story, Jim. Now let's talk about Final Fantasy for a second." And then he responded to people saying or insisting that JRPGs don't sell on Xbox, COD sells more on PlayStation than anywhere else. It's a weak argument, but Destin insisted, Xbox gamers do want to play Final Fantasy on Xbox. If it were brought to Xbox, they would play it on the console. And Dan Stapleton brought a good point. If Sony didn't think Final Fantasy was going to sell any copies on Xbox, it wouldn't have bothered to pay Square Enix to not make an Xbox version. Indeed, why bother with a cash infusion for exclusivity if it wouldn't make a difference one way or the other, if people wouldn't play the game on Xbox anyway? Sony knows that, people would play the game on Xbox. They know that by acquiring exclusivity to Final Fantasy, they are locking people to the PlayStation platform and damaging Xbox's ability to bring in new customers And that's why they are paying for that, because it is beneficial to PlayStation. Content creators like Skill have commented by saying that while they see both sides, it will never not be extremely funny that a company, Sony, that built its empire on the back of exclusive content, namely locking down the best output from Japan for the better part of 3 decades, is suddenly very concerned about the impact of exclusive content on gamers. Again, it is very hypocritical of Sony to talk about their concerns on how we, the customers and gamers, will be impacted when they have done things actively to negatively impact us in order to bolster their business. Here is Brett Medlock pointing out how Sony has paid for Forsaken exclusivity, Final Fantasy XVI and Final Fantasy VII Remake exclusivity, Street Fighter exclusivity, Deathloop and Ghostwire exclusivity, Spider-Man IP, which, Sony has the rights to, but they've not shared with Xbox or Nintendo. And then suddenly Microsoft buys COD and micro exclusive, and Sony goes, that's not fair, that's not how a proper competitive business is conducted. And again, with COD, Microsoft might go the Minecraft model, where it's just better to keep it third party, and it's just better for business, and it's better for gamers because more people have access to it, more potential revenue stream. Paul Tassi here from Forbes seems to believe that Xbox will continue to release Call of Duty on PlayStation even after the contractual obligation of 3 years is up. The Call of Duty answer also feels stupidly obvious. Xbox will continue releasing it on PlayStation to rake in tons of revenue from Sony directly. They'll obviously put it on Game Pass, which is a huge win for them. Sony will be mad, but we'll just have to deal with it, which, yeah, that's how it works when, a company purchases the rights to an IP or purchase a studio, or in this case, an entire conglomerate of studios and IPs. Jeff Keighley also brought up the point that Microsoft's Brad Smith said back in February that Xbox would treat Call of Duty similarly to Minecraft and put it on even more platforms, including continuing on PlayStation. So here's what that video looks like.
One of the things we're being very clear about as we move forward with the regulatory review of this acquisition is that great titles like Call of Duty from Activision Blizzard today will continue to be available on the Sony PlayStation. We'd like to bring it to Nintendo devices. We'd like to bring the other popular titles that Activision Blizzard has and ensure that they continue to be available on PlayStation, that they become available on Nintendo. One of the first acquisitions, really the first acquisition made after Satya Nadella became CEO, was of Minecraft. That was back in September of 2014. And what we've done with that acquisition, I think, is a clear indicator of what we hope to do if we acquire Activision Blizzard. Namely, invest even more in innovation, bring it to more people, bring it to more platforms, make it even more useful and hopefully delightful for the people who use it.
Now, on one hand, at any point after the 3 years contractual obligation to bring Call of Duty to PlayStation is up, Microsoft can decide to change their minds whenever they feel like it. But based on their current track record with Minecraft, it doesn't seem likely that they will. And again, I don't think it'd be good for business for them to keep Call of Duty exclusive to Xbox. And not to mention that Microsoft recently has been making a push for things being on more devices. They're not trying to keep things exclusive to the Xbox hardware. They're thinking more in terms of service and platform rather than console, which is why Game Pass is such a big part of this generation of their gaming push, is to bring Game Pass to as many platforms as possible, to smart TVs, and not relegate that to just Xbox hardware. And so their current initiatives seem to align with what I think is the likelihood that Call of Duty will remain multi-platform, just as Minecraft has remained multi-platform. Though, certain things like potential exclusive content to incentivize people to play it on Xbox, that I could see happening. Moving on, here we have B Ray Forever pointing out how, according to Xbox, Sony paid to keep titles off Xbox and Game Pass, which negatively impact Microsoft, and we're supposed to feel sorry for them now. Turnabout is fair play. The level of hypocrisy coming from Sony right now is staggering. Here we have the consultant who tweeted, "I never have seen Sony PlayStation so scared about a multi-platform franchise. Make your customers a better offer they cannot pass on instead of playing the victim and whining." Disgusting statements by Jim Ryan, in my opinion. Here is Gene Park from the Washington Post, who kind of had a more neutral stance about both Sony and Microsoft seeing bad headlines, but for Sony specifically, yeah, the way they're arguing against Microsoft's acquisition is just not a good look. He says that Sony and Microsoft both aren't having amazing news cycles right now. Halo Infinite is a trash fire, and yeah, we'll talk about that when I have time to catch up. Again, I've been away on a vacation for a week, so Yeah, I'll get to that in a bit. And Xbox has a content problem that will last through 2022, while Sony is now known for complaining about Call of Duty and charging people more money for 2-year-old tech, referring to, again, the PlayStation 5 price hike in regions outside the US. And not to mention, plenty of people are having a hard time justifying The Last of Us Part 1 as being $70. Many people believe it should have been maybe like $50, given this is the third time this game's been released. And as awesome and fantastic as the remade aspects are, it's still ultimately the same game beat for beat that we played twice before with the previous 2 releases of the game, except it's less feature complete because the multiplayer mode isn't featured in there, so that does justify a price reduction, so there's a lot of arguments surrounding that. Gene Park also believes that it's absolutely possible to compete against Call of Duty and hopes that this inspires Sony Studios or others to compete creatively with Call of Duty. It's absolutely possible. Other games are close. Benji Sales here pointing out how Nintendo's just kind of on the sidelines, just kind of watching all of this unfold unaffected. Meanwhile, selling over 100 million Switch units and their software selling super well, and just kind of doing their own thing and still thriving as a business. So yeah, while there are certainly arguments to be made on both sides, both on Xbox and Sony side, I think the one who has the more negative optics is Sony. They're making the poorer arguments, are coming off as hypocritical, and with recent moves that they've made that have been sort of anti-consumer, Sony has no right to talk about other companies allegedly being anti-consumer and not considering the impact, the negative impact they're having on gamers when Sony and PlayStation don't really seem to be doing the same on a number of fronts. I love their games, don't get me wrong, but come on, Sony, don't get up on a high horse when, you have a track record yourself. Let's not pretend like this has anything to do with how this will impact us, the customers and gamers. This has everything to do with how all of this will impact you as a corporation and a business. Well, at the very least, that's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on Xbox and PlayStation, Microsoft and Sony bickering over the impact that Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard and Call of Duty will have on the games industry, and Sony insisting it's anti-competitive and Microsoft saying that's completely false. Share your thoughts below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.